our diverse stakeholders. Let me introduce the presenters on today. Assistant Professor Takanori Matsui, University of Osaka. Ms. Yuki Isaka, Operating Professor, Head of the Environment and Improvement Department, Sekisui House Ltd. Mr. Hiromune Mitsuhashi, Chief Curator, Museum of the Nature and the Human Activities, Hyogo. And Koji Miwa, Research Manager, Biodiversity and Ecosystem Unit, IGES. From now on, IGES and Mr. Miwa will take the lead as a facilitator. Miwa-san, the floor is yours. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I am Miwa, a research manager at Biodiversity and Ecosystem Unit, IGES. I'm the moderator for the parallel session 1. And in this session, so this is for that in S21 as Environmental Research and Technology Development Fund, a Strategic Research and Development Project S21. So it's a collaboration with that. So this is for the integration of that, the assessment of the biodiversity and socioeconomic drivers. And Professor Matsui is one of the member for that S-21. Anyway, that we have only 1 hour to go. Let's get started. And first, I will highlight the framework of this session. So, as discussed in the plenary session, so we are now in the triple crisis in the globe, the climate change and the loss of the biodiversity, and also that the pollution. So it has they have a great impact on that in us and also the globe, and also that in the trade and also that in the various aspects that they're having impact on them. So here that we have, in order to address them, that the synergy approach is necessary, and also in order to realize that the sustainable society that we need to prevent from those damages, and also that we need to put them on the recovery track. So which means that we need to transform to that the nature positive society, and for that, and not only the synergy approach, but the holistic approach for that society is required. So this session will focus on the green infrastructures and then how that we can do that and how we can leverage the synergy to transform ourselves to that green infrastructure. So when it comes to that in the triple crisis and also that the loss of the biodiversity, that we are coming across to that in the loss of biodiversity. So when it comes to the pollution, so it is that direct cause and effect. So therefore that we address that this issue, then we can address the triple crisis on the whole. So what is a green infrastructure? So the nature has the various functions, which is called the ecosystem service, so that then green infrastructure can leverage that to make that the recovery and also that the absorption of the greenhouse gas. So it is that in one of the social capital, and also that we can leverage that in the nature, that we can improve that in the level of the living, and also that create the various economies. So therefore, that the nature-based the solution is required. So this is an example of that green infrastructure. So there are the various the examples in the city that you can see that the vegetation on the building and also that there's some habitats in the city and also the biotope for that and also that the coastal area that we leverage in the green to protect the coastal area and also that the abandoned farmland is utilized for the protection of the nature. So, what is the research result in the globe? So, it's the latest version of the IPBES, the assessment. So, how we can leverage that and how we can realize that the nature positive society and the green infrastructure. The key word here is that we will understand that the various value of the nature and also that they bring about the social transformation necessary for that the nature positive society and also that the nexus approach. So what is that in the value of the nature? So we have the intrinsic and the value, instrumental value, and also the relational value. So you can see that the right side of the chart. So in the intrinsic value, so without having a human being, that the nature has its own value. So without having the human being, that those trees and the flowers will be that grown, and then also that circulating the water and air. And instrumental value wise, so people use the nature for the certain purpose and leveraging as the resources and assets. For example, the building and also that the making the furniture and also that the leveraging for that tourism and so on. So that is the instrumental value. And the last one is a relational value. So that is the holistic relation between the human and nature. Human is just one of them. So therefore, that the nature is one of the culture and sometimes it's a religious asset. And also that creating the good landscape and the monetary speaking, it is very difficult to convert to the money. So in the current society, so we leverage in the instrumental value, but we believe that relational value is also important. That is a current discussion. Next. So how we can transform our society to the nature positive society. So here is the transformative assessment. So that I highlighted some of them. So they are the four principles as you can see on the screen. These are the important ones. So as you can see that the equity and justice and the pluralism and inclusion, respect for and the reciprocal human-nature relationship and the adaptive learning and action. These things are important for that in the policy and life cycle. So these need to be that cascade down into our life and society. So if we can realize that there's four principles and that we need to take that other strategies. So that's the 5 strategies here. But beforehand, in order to realize them, it is important to transform the sense of value structure and customs. So there are the 5 items that you can see. This is an action strategy. So the first one is to conserve and the regenerative place of the value to the nature and the people. And the second one is to drive the system change in the section most responsible for the natures and the designs. So such as in agriculture, the fishery, the forestry and infrastructure and so on. And the third one is to transform the economic system for the nature and the equities and such as the dominance of the economy and also financial paradigm, so that to make sure we prioritize the social justice and the fairness. And the number 4, to transform the governance and system to be the integrative, the inclusion, and also the accountable and the adaptive. And the last one, number 5, shift views and the values to the recognize the human nature interconnectedness. So I cannot, get into each of the items. So in this way, that if we can put them that the green infrastructure into that in those strategies that is quite important to do that in implementation. And the last one is about the next approach, just that in a synergy approach. And it is already indicated in the report. And then what is the nexus, by the way? That is that in interlink is among the two or more elements and sectors, and also the systems. So you can say that again, the biodiversity or the climate change and the nature oriented, and so those kind of things. So that's the items. So the next approach means that and then we will really maximize the synergy among those relations, and also that then minimize the trade-off, and also that the relations between the sectors and the systems, and we also that the dependency need to be that understood. So by doing so, that then they make sure that we avoid any trade-off, and also that then focusing on the synergy to be maximized.
So this is the 5 strategies for TFC. What kind of nexus approach can be held? And let's think about how we can shift to nature positive society. Next, let's move to the case studies. First, Professor Matsui from Osaka University and Miss Isaka from Sekisui House and Ms. Mitsuhashi from the Museum of Nature and House in Hyogo Prefecture. Professor Matsui is going to talk about the biodiversity. Thank you for your kind introduction. My name is Matsui from Osaka University. On this very hot day, I am very happy to be in the same panel as you. As you've discussed, was introduced, biodiversity. Nexus means relationship in Latin, and think as a project in the Ministry of the Environment. And I would like to talk about one topic about this. I want to talk about this busy scale. There is a globe on the right-hand side. Please think those are animals. We have fishery, make energy, have tourism, make infrastructure, and the land is manipulated, energy resources are used, and animals suffer from that. More activities human beings have, there is an impact on animals. It is because of culture and system, all these infrastructure was not created with the thought of animals. There was no pretext that animals are our partners. And it is because in our value system, animals are not incorporated. So as a leverage point, it is the mission of this is to create something to change the thought process and include animals as our partners. Sorry, there's one slide missing. Green infrastructure and biodiversity is involved in making use of solar panels, but the mountains are land is used for solar panels, which is a negative nexus. In order to prove what the problem against it, need to think about green nexus that doesn't have any influence or batting against the nature. There are 5 different types of recyclable energy: solar, wind, thermal, and there are a repo system to think about which would be the potential energy together with biodiversity and animal habitat. And that's what the presentation involves today. First, this is how the energy, renewable energy, is deployed. Zero is in the middle. Left is the energy, nature energy, something like coal. And then on the right hand side, there are natural energy and 250 gigawatts energy is necessary. And the right hand side, natural energy, the orange stands for solar system, where panels are put on the land, and also the water generation, hydro generation. On the sixth energy principle, need to double the amount of solar and hydro. Doubling it in repos energy potential, when looked at it, analyze it, by far there are more energy as potential. But by looking at this, you think there are so much energy, and why do we only use energy that would have negative effect on nature? And need to think about why that's happening. Basically, energy breakdown, we talk about solar power, wind power, hydro, thermal. 90% of that come from solar and wind, and need to think about that more thoroughly. Solar, sometimes panels are on the building walls that will not inflict with any animals, but there are solar panels that are put somewhere. Also, we have offshore, onshore wind power, and there are some energy systems that would influence badly to animal habitats such as bats and other birds. And it is important for us to prioritize the solar or wind energy that do not have any negative influence on birds or other animals. And in repos, created or made where the energy is. And there are lots of different kinds of energy, but human beings can technically took out. And also there are some energy, something like no good energy, that are subject to restrictions based on laws, regulations, and government. So there are great potentials, but whether that is acceptable or not in the community is a different story. So this shows the negative zoning and positive zoning. Basically, full potential. So all the level of today's energy that we can technically take out, we took out those that have restrictions, and after that there are some regulations from municipalities, so we took that off, and then we went down to the city regulations and land use, and there are promoted areas that cities have set. So try to use those areas and use it for energy, to create energy. In Hyogo, Kasai City is a promotion, has created a proportion area, which is inside Kasai City. Which part is used for renewable energy is only 5% of what Repos has designed. So full potential energy, as you say, there is vast, right? There is so much, but there are no good energy which comprises the majority of that, and need to have create energy only from admitted areas. That's the big problem that we are facing. So we have undergoing the governmental project, carrying out the governmental project, and here by making use of the promotional areas and try to have talk to municipal banks and other industries and talk a lot about these promotional areas. And 17 out of 1700, we are only used handful of positive areas. So that part needs to be supported, and need to think about whether we can get rid of negative zoning in the whole country. In reports at the country level, there are parts that are legally prohibited, and that remains to 2,800 gigawatts. And there are 150 gigawatts that Japan wants to create. So which part would be used first? And what we think of first, which areas should be preserved. Need to think about the areas that we need to reserve, land and ocean by 2030. Both land and ocean, 30% of them has to be preserved, conserved. And that's the data we have from the UN and other areas. There are some duplication, but about 30% of the land and the sea. And after that, about 2040 gigawatt will remain. So for the conserved areas, we don't need to put solar panels as well as wind turbines. However, by 30, we will not be able to reach the target. So there is avian influence. And now look at the land and need to think about the animals that live on the land.
If that is the case, then better not to put in the PV or that in the wind power generation, and also that in here that the sea, the depths of that in the sea has the more resources. Some of that in the sea area that is important, is not that important. So therefore, that we capture those kind of things against that in the nature. That if we do that, then what if analysis? So 524 gigawatt is remaining, and on the land we can do that in 96% the preservation, and also that for the ocean that's 40% in the preservation. And then that we do have that potential for that energy. There's a room for that. That's why that we can see some potential, so we can go preserve that the creatures. Meanwhile, that then we can do that this kind of the energy creation. So by doing so that we can make the good balance. That's the big message from my side. So when it comes to the biodiversity and also the renewable energies and the nexus, and we just focusing on the creatures and the wind power and the solar power, right? But if we do then the preservation for that kind of creatures, with so if we say that in the duck and also the bags, so the ammonium concentration, then these are the very costly that the power resources, right? So it's not that good because it will be that not rational for that the power sources. So therefore, that what the international society is mentioning is that the energy poverty, that's the people talking about. So if we use that in a very complex set in the power, so then that power energy per unit, the unit price goes up. So especially in Japan, that the senior ladies has the difficulties to cover such kind of the higher costs. So if that is the case, there will be the disparity economically. So therefore, that we need to take care of that. So coming back to the big theme here, so we need to have that SDG standpoint, and also that the nexus of that the SDG, and then that we need to consider that the carbon neutral and also that SDGs. And that's all from my side. Thank you very much for your attention. Professor Matsui, thank you very much. Let's move on to the Isaka-san. So Isaka-san is coming from that Osekisui housing. So therefore, that how they do that the biodiversity while that maintaining the business. So that she will talk about that. Thank you very much. I am Isaka from the Sekisui house. So I would highlight what we are doing in our company. As you know, that we are the housing manufacturer. So because of that, so how we are involved in that in the nature and the biodiversity, because we are that building up the houses, so that we make that change on that the nature. So as that our company's risk, especially that wood procurement, and also that this is the opportunity as well. So risk and opportunity in this way that we are involved in that this biodiversity. So when it comes to that the impact on the nature, you can see the left side, that is a wood procurement. So it was negative because we did that in wood procurement, but make sure that we try to make back to zero impact. So such as the fair wood and also sustainable wood procurement. But for that, so we set up the guideline for the wood procurement in the Sekisui housing to make sure that these woods are that illegally that cut out, and also that the DCF. So we talked and explained about this DCF to the suppliers and make sure that we try to get to that level. And we also do that in the on-site due diligence, as you can see in the Circle 3, the Indonesia, the Vietnam. We visited those countries last year, and we also checked that those sourcing and how they procure and how they cut the trees, and we did the due diligence on our own. And then so we have like a TNFD, and also that in our report, we also that issued the ESG report that's in the Sekisui, and we update it in the year by year to disclose that situation. So we try to bring the negative to the positive aspect. That's on the left side, but we're not going to get to the nature positive. So therefore, around 25 years before that, we started doing the project called the Gohon no Ki project, or the 5-tree project. This is opportunities. As I mentioned, we started as of 2001, and this is to recover the biodiversity. And so I will talk about the details later on. But anyway, that we try to leverage that in the garden and that the residents to try to make a contribution to that the biodiversity. So that we did the scientific evaluation, and also that in the quantitative that the evaluation to make sure that it is there's a contribution to the biodiversity or not. So in this way that we try to address that the risk as well as the creating opportunities, as you can see on the screen. Next. So what is that in the Gohon no Ki project? And 3 trees for the bird and 2 trees for the butterflies, so that we try to then protect a native tree species. And this is a concept of this project. So compare with the gardening for species and the foreign species, and then we can get more the creature species to the garden. And by doing so, that we can maintain that in the biodiversity. That is the nutshell. In the very beginning, and of course, that even in Japan, there's the difference of the climate. So therefore, that we choose the right the tree species for each of the region, and then that we prepare the booklet for that in the choice. And then that we try to collaborate with in the supply chain because in the beforehand in the trees wise the trees are available in that road or any land. It's not sold in that stores. So that's why that we collaborate with the suppliers to set up the supply chain. So through that those activities. Currently, the 21 million 400 21,430,000 trees are that already planted. So in that garden of that each of the customers' residence, so that we are now that preparing that the environment for that the residents the planting. So then the comparison to Tokyo that we did it 20 times more when it comes to planting the trees. What is an effect? So we did the quantitative data analysis here in the 2021. So the Professor Kubota had some data of the creatures, and we do have data for that the trees planted in the gardens, so that we put them together. So how much of the tree species and how much of the species of the creatures that increased. So you can see the result of our analysis here. So we get some evidence backup of that in our project. So here in the garden, so we try to connect the dots to make that earlier and then connect to the Satoyama. But if we do the secretary alone do it, and it's not that big. So as you can see here, only that effect is 41.9%. You can see that the blue number, 30% of that housing starts. If that all the housing starts of the residential than houses, 30% of them have done, and then we have an effect of 84.6%. So which means that we alone should not do it. We need to collaborate with the other companies as well. Recently, what is the effect of the bio-enriched the garden? Of course, that if there's the more green, it has a good impact on the health. But aside from that, if the more diversified garden has the positive effect on the health or not, so that we did an evaluation with the University of Tokyo, the professors. So about depression risk, as you can see on the right side, and thanks to that the garden with that enriched biodiversity, that it reduced that the risk of the depression by 20 percentage point. So we leverage those data. It is good for the creatures, but it's good for the human being as well. So the result of this research is, and we shouldn't just maintain it as a research because we are doing the business, right? So therefore, that we need to leverage it for the business as well. How we can cascade down the result into our employees. So we leverage the result, and then you can see Gohon no Ki Compass. This is a tool, internal tool inside of a company. So here, what there's a residential address, right? So that how many high trees, how many low trees that you want to plant. And then if you input that, and then you can get those species, which species are coming into the garden. So that kind of software is available. So then that the customer can see it. And so that we set up the KPI for this. And then if you maintain that a certain level of number, and then we can make the contribution to the biodiversity. So therefore, that in the KPI was kind of difficult to set up, but we set up the tools for the designer and architect, so that we try to make the business efficient, and at the same time we try to imprint the knowledge into our employees.
So far, last 25 years, In 2021, the evaluation was made. Moreover, Think Nature, together with people, came up with a white paper where we put together all the results. Last week, in Nature Positive Summit in Kumamoto, made a presentation. We have both Japanese and English versions, also for technical report as well as essential guide for the general public. It would be great if you could take a look at them. And we are going to have some news on our homepage of Sekisui House as well. In conclusion, this is Gohonoki project, 5-tree project, will be one of the green infrastructure. Not only our own garden will contribute to the nature positive cities, although it's small, but having many of them, putting them together, there is a scientific verification, sharing of the data, and hope to use the knowledge and evidence and implement in the real society. And in order to make contribution, can make various stakeholders, customers, as well as academia, and collaborate and make the well-being come true. And this is one of, I think, the mission that private industry can have. And that's the case study introduction from me. Thank you for your attention. Mrs. Saka, thank you very much. Now moving to Mr. Mitsuhashi. Mr. Mitsuhashi will talk about Hyogo Prefecture, small-scale technologies, and the Nexus approach. Mr. Mitsuhashi, the floor is yours. I'm a chief curator, Museum of Nature and Human Activities, Kyoto Prefecture. Today, I'd like to introduce small-scale technologies that many people can take on and the Nexus approach. I'd like to include some concrete technologies. Let's now think about Nexus, effect of Nexus. You can look at books and read green infrastructure. Many people question, is it really possible? And in Hyogo Prefecture in Mariama River, this is taking place in 2024 after a big natural disaster. Is a break of the dam, and it was important to have the restructuring. Here you can see we had a nature restoration project for Mariama River, and an approach that views multiple related issues in comprehensive manner and seeks to resolve them simultaneously. And many birds came here to use the river bed to have a place to have food. And we were able to restore the nature as well as create a feeding bed for birds, although it took a lot of budget. But balancing food flood control was possible, but we had to have both balancing food control as well as controlling water, and used 70 billion yen for that. It is real nexus, and it resulted in promotion of tourism as well as creation of a new university. This was a big scale approach, but this is Toyooka City. These are wetlands listed under the Ramsar Convention. Taichiku, it's called Taichi region. This is the north of Hyogo Prefecture in the fish town, which is a bit isolated, and there were problems. Water management was necessary, but thanks to konotori that came, we were able to have a habitat creation. We at first put a lot of rocks and try to do simple water management and usage. And we try to do flooding the rice paddies. And after the small verification, together with the prefectural workers here, we used the weir and let the water overflow and usage. So this we were able to decrease the peak by 22.1%, which is more highly effective than a usual dam. And we were able to balance flood control as well as the environment and the issue of abandoned farmland. And together with the University of Tokyo Department of Agriculture, this place is used as a field work and those area as well as high schools, and many tourism promotion took place. When Kinosaki Hot Spring is crowded, people chose this land of abandoned farmland to stay over. So this was what Nexus made possible. This was a multifaceted approach. It is not anything new. It's been here for a long time. For me, Nexus approach, I think, comes from Kobo Taishi, where he is. It's the propagation of Buddhism, and he did even many more things. Many people in poverty, suffering from drought, flood. In order for this priest to be heard by the community people, he thought that flood control, water management, agriculture, and have clear water for people to drink. All this water management helped with the propagation of Buddhism. So Buddhism is something that is deep and people don't have a clear understanding. But he packaged Buddhism with water management and flood control. He had great skill in packaging that. This is the origin, probably a traditional multifaceted approach. Japan was famous for that. I think it was true to the world. Next, I want to talk about another Nexus approach, which was highly effective. I want to introduce Dr. Nakamura in Afghanistan. He went to Afghanistan as a physician, but he started so-called the Green Earth Project, which is an irrigation project, together with healthcare. It doesn't have a direct relationship to biodiversity, but this is one example of a Nexus approach. He took part in a small-scale project which can be maintained and tweaked by the community people in the future. This is something that anybody can be engaged in. Flooding comes forever. Things will break. And when you want to fix it, if you make it with concrete, you cannot fix it. But this can be fixed later again. This is a manual small-scale system, which we call a traditional water intake technology using angled weir. This is from Akita Prefecture, again an example of small-scale nature resolution. We want to restore the land which is next to a store in Akita Prefecture. And this is a part of a training system of Akita Prefecture. And many people try to recover the flooding and have environmental measures following disaster recovery. And by digging 2 meters down, it only needed a labor of 1 day, no money necessary, but were able to manage fishery resources and revitalize roadside stations and human resource development. And as it is something that was possible because it was a small scale.
So if it is more, smaller, it will be like this. You can see. So in order to get the water more easily, that they here that we do that some engineering work, and then once that there's the no more that the flooding, and then that we can change it again. So that here that we did that dam up, and then that fish can are running, and then that we avoided any sand deposition, and you can find that the big the rock, and then we brought it to that road area, try to the protect the slope area of the road. We can do this, nexus activities together with the residents. So here, that's what we did. But aside from that, and we need to do that, wider holistic approach that is in a landscape approach. So this is a little bit. Well, kind of, the virtual, but I'm not going to say that in the way it is, but it is inside of the Hyogo Prefecture. But if you see that in a river, there's some red species there, and then where that the water intake is stand, and if we put that, or the mark, and it is easy to do that. And here, there are so many giant salamanders, and there's so many obstacles that they have difficulties that move around. And here that we use that in the budget to make that a very big fish route, but there's there's some the issues. So that it takes that so much cost around several billions of yen, and at the lower stream that they did that the water intake too much, therefore that the drought occurs and the water temperature increase, and also that the mud deposition occurs. So therefore that we need to do that in the systematic approach to do the landscape approach, and if we do that in the cost and in land this in the first one is very easy to do that, and you can see the giant salamanders and the 37 giant salamanders are going upward through that the water stream, and then it takes only 50,000 yen. So this kind of small scale technology is quite important and strategically where to address, and that is very important to preserve the biodiversity in an efficient manner. And not only that the nature capital, but we have some issues. If we do that, water intake too much, and also that water usage right is very strong, and then against the global warming that we cannot do that the water discharge from the dam before that the disaster occurs, and then here comes to that the data center building, and it is very difficult for us to do that in the water discharge from the dam, and then we need to address that those population fluctuation. And here, this water intake and the water problem is remaining here. And here, the water discharge so much because of that in a new town developments ongoing. And here, that furthermore, that the food the plant is in the built up, and then that wastewater is going into that in the watershed. And then at the lower level of that, river, the the other facilities take up the water, and then there's less balance in between, and they cannot do that in a flood control either. Under that in the infrastructure and the development, I think that we can do more about that through that the landscape approach, and this is an important part for this landscape approach. So under this circumstance, and if we protect and everything, again that in the water shortage occurs, and in the end, and we need to build a new dam, and then you need more money. It's not sustainable anymore. So including that aspect. So we need to consider that policy for the new land usage. So when it comes to that green infrastructure, then we talk about technology and also tools, right? No, we need to consider the package. So what we call the working landscape and design, and also that we need to develop the element technology to sustain that, so that in Hyogo Prefecture and then the Hyogo City, Kobe City, then they clustered those and the technology. So we need to prepare that kind of picture here. So how it is. So here that you can see that the rice husk and also the straw walls, and we can utilize them. So that what we need to do is, and we need to set up the scheme, right? That we don't have to move around. We can circulate it inside of this area. Same as that in the woods, so that we can make that a high level wood circulation. The Kobe City is at an advance in this field. So this is an important for the nexus approach and the landscape approach. Sorry, I was in the floor making the very long in presentation, but anyway, so make sure that we will do that in the social implementation in the local manner, and not only that in the visualization that we need to make it feasible. So not only that the biodiversity map, but also that we need to do that right, applicable technology mapping matching is important against that mapping. That's all from my side. Thank you. Mitsuhashi-san, thank you very much. So from that, scientific as well as the business activities, and also that activities from the seasons aspect, I believe that you have the various aspects to be covered in your presentation. So we have that very limited time, so that we couldn't do the Q&A session with an audience, but instead, so in the framework I mentioned in the very beginning of my presentation, and then I was checking whether that it is fit in the framework or not, and also that I would like to raise the question from my side as well. So here that what Professor Matsui mentioned, so not only that the climate change, but also that the biodiversity and nature positive, that we need to see them, and also that the SDGs need to be that checked. So that kind of nexus is what he's covering, and also that these strategies, I mentioned about the 5 strategies for the DFC, so that your research is pretty much in line with these 5 strategies, and in reality in the future. So when it comes to that those renewable energy, that there's some that that's something that we need to consider, such as the resilience and also that the disaster and so on. So and how we can make that a good balance in between the carbon neutrality and the nature positive. So Professor Matsui, that what will be the future research do we need to do? So when it comes to that the renewable energy, that we need to collaborate among all the stakeholders, the users, generators, and everybody. So all the stakeholders need to be involved and to find out what would be the possible nexus in this field. So it would be my advice. And so this is an ISAP 2026, and that's the preliminary, right? So that, and aside from that, we have the thematic session in that August and September. At the time that please come and join us, and we talk about the renewable energy and the biodiversity, connecting with each other, right? And then how we can do that. We do that a more deep dive meeting and intensive meeting to be held in the August and September. Please, join us. Thank you very much. Matsui said, thank you very much. Thank you very much for that, covering that thematic session as well. Now that Ms. Esaka, the presentation shows not only that the CSR and the ESG, but also that they have the good balance between the business and the biodiversity. That when it comes to nexus, so biodiversity and the health, and also the climate change, but also that the food and the water. So through that, planting the trees, that has a positive contribution to them, and the transformative change strategy wise that all the five you made in the contribution. So therefore that it has that good contribution to that transformation to that nature positive.
So my question, in what way did you come up with Gohonoki activity? And did you expect the outcome like this? And also, is there any other plan that you are thinking of to achieve biodiversity? Yes. First, I work for the housing company. We started thinking of having a green view from inside the room and thought about merits that customers have and suggested having creating gardens. And this has been our tradition of suggesting houses as well as gardens, and that's how Gohonoki 5-tree activity came about. In the past, looking at animal count and noticed that the number of animal is increasing, but decided to have data so that we have good evidence in order for us to continue with the project. And we started quantitative analysis because of that. In the past, there wasn't any direct linkage to data. It wasn't used as evidence for biodiversity. This was nothing we dreamed of. We were only started to create happiness among customers, but as a result, we were able to come up with the data that we showed you today, and in the future, we'd like to have a tool more extensively by employees, and in an active manner want to contribute to biodiversity and by protect animals or increasing the animal as well as carrying out with our business. And as I said, I'd like to collaborate with other construction companies and collect data together with those companies for data and for the deployment of their business. It was important for them to create more greenery, and this kind of trial was good in order for us to have a good network, and we want to continue this way and contribute to nature positivity. Lastly, Mr. Mitsuhashi, you introduced us biodiversity, water management, and sustainable industry, and told us the caseworks that people in the community contributed together and talked about traditional activity from Meiji era. My question is about the people who contributed in these activities. Did it change any awareness or their feelings toward green infrastructure? and having this traditional green infrastructure, and by making use of small-scale tools, are you thinking of making it more large-scale and deploy it horizontally across Japan? I would like you to tell me any ideas you may have. The community residents, yes, they took part in our activity, but the main target was small to mid-sized business and want to increase more work for them. As at present in Kobe, there are more and more companies that can take part in these activities. This would have a positive influence for circulation of economy, and I think that kind of toolbox is necessary. Residents want that have priority for me. Of course, they can be part of it, and it was great that they took part in our project. But they took part in a voluntarily, but we couldn't force them into it. So mid to small companies, for example, the companies who are involved in thatched roofs, those demand might not last forever. So they can contribute to the revival of nature or making art using thatched materials in order for the industries to continue to be sustainable. That's the most important theme for us. Also, the deployment of small-scale activities. These association, we had a summit of these associations all over Japan, and 400 people from young to the old took part in the summit, and the scale merit was achieved. And in each prefectures, the deployment is taking place. And this is also as a basic act of a Ministry of Land Infrastructure as a basic act. Thank you. From a multifaceted approach, you had many perspectives and gave us honest opinions and a lot of ideas. We learned a lot. And in order to activate green infrastructure from now on, we noticed that multifaceted approach is very important. Thank you very much for your cooperation. And the time has come now to close our plenary session. So this is the end of the parallel session 1.